everybody, and welcome to our January Digital Transformation Series webinar today, where we'll be talking about cloud scalability and operational efficiency. For those that may not know me, I'm Dave DelVecchio, the VP of Marketing and Communications for Sourcepass, and we appreciate you coming in to join us today. In addition to myself, I'll be moderating today's session. We are not going to be giving you death by PowerPoint. I've brought three friends along, and we want to do a panel discussion today to kind of gain some insights from each of their perspectives on cloud scalability and operational maturity. Our first guest is Robbie Swiebel, who might be a familiar name. He's taken part in some of these sessions previously, and Robbie is our VP of Professional Services. Robbie, I'll have you come on screen and introduce yourself, but to give people some context, correct me if I'm wrong, but pro services is basically bisected into two primary groups, one of which tends to be more infrastructure focused, the other is our cloud specialty group, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's how we have our engineers segmented today. So that way we have people who are essentially SMEs in each field and are very knowledgeable in cloud and infrastructure. They change so often, it's so hard to keep up. So that's why we've kind of aligned specialties that are like, all right, this is my focus. I'm gonna learn everything about it. And they can offer that kind of special expertise in that field. And it's worked out very well for us.
Awesome. And then also joining our party will be Colin D'Angelo. Colin, welcome. And you'll notice Colin and Victor, our next guest, have similar titles, but you and Victor kind of work provide consulting services for kind of different audiences at this point. Colin, as a member of our solutions team, did what Victor does as we introduce Victor, but now Colin, you're specializing mostly in consulting with new prospects and potential clients coming to Sourcepass. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Assisting with our new logo sales, with kind of exploring opportunities for new clients to discover our capabilities and services and kind of get them on the right path for their IT based on their needs.
Nice. And quite often, as we're talking to prospective clients, they're often bringing challenges with them, many times revolved around maybe a lack of scalability from their current provider or challenges that they're facing involved with cloud expansion or adoption. So Colin was asked to join our party today because he regularly consults with clients on these discussion points, as does Victor Garcia. And Victor, thanks for joining us today. In Victor's case, some of you who are existing Sourcepass clients might have actually had conversations or worked on projects that Victor had a hand in, because you tend to partner with our client strategy team to help architect solutions for our existing client base when they're facing cloud adoptions as well as other projects, correct?
Yes, that is correct. So I like to look at some existing pain points and kind of see where we can go ahead and advance your business with technology, see how we can make you guys more effective with the solutions that we can provide.
That's awesome. So, and Victor, correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually came to solutions from more of an engineering background. We're used to implement cloud solutions, among other things as well, correct?
Yes, exactly. So I was a senior cloud engineer over on Robbie's team for some time, and I transitioned over to solutions and was able to kind of bring that knowledge and experience with me in the solutions and scoping perspective.
That's great. So let's start our discussion. We'll table the PowerPoint for a bit and let people kind of focus on the discussion points here. For leaders who might have joined today's session who are thinking about growth, what are some of the early warning signs that their current IT approaches might be failing to scale with their business? What are some of the pain points that people are often coming to us with when they are seeking our guidance? Colin, why don't I start with you?
Some of the pain points with business scalability is clients acquiring or onboarding new locations and start this process of having to have server infrastructure kind of deployed everywhere, and you start taking on these large one-time expenses that you need to maintain this equipment. Assisting with consolidating server infrastructure to SaaS or cloud-based platforms allows kind of that borderless network kind of approach to things where everything is, up in the cloud. It's secured in a manner that is far better than what could be a local server room in, a closet somewhere.
Well, and I think that's going to be a recurring theme of today's session, because I know that for a lot of folks, especially newer companies that have started within, let's say, the last 5 to 10 years, they likely have taken a very cloud-centric approach, because the cloud has been a mature offering for well over a decade now. However, most businesses have been in business for decades and quite often have some sort of legacy infrastructure that they're trying to maintain as well. So figuring out the right time to maybe move to a cloud first or cloud only approach, or running a hybrid combination of on-premise and cloud becomes a consideration as well. So Victor, as you're looking at some of the existing clients that we work with, what are some of those challenges in scaling that they're facing that might be tied to some of that legacy technology?
I think to your point, a lot of these industries kind of continue to use stuff that they're comfortable with. So they might have a line of business application that they've been using for the last 8 years that the rest of their staff is very comfortable and used to using, but that application might no longer be supported. It might be on an operating system that's end of life. So now you're running security risks. That's often what I see as an indicator as a good candidate to move to the cloud. And again, understanding that it is a transition process, and you're going to have to kind of work through some of those pain points to get to where you want to be. But poor performance in hardware, networking equipment, applications, those are red flags usually.
Mm-hmm. And Robbie, I know one of the common industries that we would historically have run into a lot of these sort of legacy infrastructure issues with seem to be around manufacturing, because quite often manufacturing companies, have some sort of a machine guided, some sort of a device, a CNC machine or something that controls mechanics, often driven through some sort of interface card that's tying the manufacturing equipment into their computer network. Sometimes those specialty things cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're so tied to trying to keep using the legacy technology, they'll often fall several generations behind, and you got to try and integrate all this stuff. Do you tend to find that is a common challenge? And are there other examples maybe in other industries where the legacy footprint often holds back the ability to scale and grow?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you were saying manufacturing, I know I can rattle off a couple of clients off the top of my head that still use like AS400s on-prem, and that always constitutes a challenge. But that's why I think it's really important, our CS function, and really planning out the client's STAs and where you're trying to go in the next 5 years, and really understanding, all right, so we have a 5-year plan. Maybe let's do a little bit of hybrid to kind of jumpstart you to get there. So like, let's leave this on-prem. We can work with the vendor, the manufacturer. Maybe they have a SaaS offering. Maybe they are exploring going to the cloud. So, all right, what part of your business can we move to the cloud, and how do we make that work with your legacy on-prem systems to kind of get you started on your journey to the cloud? There's all sorts of different routes you can take. I was talking to a couple of Fortune 100 companies at the last conference I was at, and they were just telling me that like 20% of their infrastructure is only in the cloud. So even like massive companies, this one was a oil manufacturing company, they're just starting their journey. So you don't have to be sad that like your entire company can't get into the cloud. It is definitely like incremental steps. All right, what can we do to get you there, as like a jump start? And it's really interesting to see, like, all right, what part of your business can we move to the cloud? Does it make sense? Are you going to lose any performance? And it's really understanding, like, all right, it's the journey. We'll get you there, but let's start taking the paths now,
Yeah, absolutely. And you made the point about how you ran into these folks from a Fortune 100 company. I think to a lot of business owners, particularly those that might be small business or mid-market, they hear a word like scalability and they immediately think of enterprise. But that ability to grow might be growing your 25-person to a 35-person company, or 50-person to 100-person. So this isn't a discussion that's purely enterprise focused. What sort of difference, Colin, I'll throw this back to you to start. What sort of difference do you see, if there is one, between scalability concerns for a small business as opposed to a mid-market or enterprise business?
Small businesses tend to, focus on a very select line of business applications and services. So no significant issues with scale. But for kind of direct to consumer purchases, such as, running a website that you sell, let's just say children's shoes, for example, you're going to have two big points of the year where it's around Christmas and back to school time, where you are going to need a large amount of resources to support your clients. And, that is the scalability of cloud architecture, where you don't need to invest in the hardware for your worst day or your busiest day. It's working off of scalable architecture that you can expand for these busy seasons. Oprah mentions your product on her book club, and all of a sudden you didn't even expect that. On a scalable cloud architecture, you can expand for that unknown.
That's a great point. So you have the ability to accommodate for seasonality, as opposed to if you're buying it as infrastructure, you kind of have to buy it for the peak, and then you have more than you need on the periods where you don't have quite as much demand. But I guess from a company size standpoint, you figure in general, I would imagine small businesses tend to be a little bit more nimble in that they can move more quickly because it's harder to turn the battleship, right? To Robbie's point, when you're a Fortune 100 company with national or multinational reach, to swing 1,000 users over to a new platform is going to take a lot more time and effort than it might be to move 50 users. Victor, do you tend to find that the adoption of the newer technologies tends to be quicker in small business, or does it really kind of depend on the organization on factors other than just their size?
I think there's more factors than just size, but regardless of size, I think the most important thing is really having the business owners understand how the technology interfaces with what they're doing day to day, because that gives you the kind of groundwork and how you plan to scale over time. It gives you the future proofing of what you expect to happen and how you expect the technology to grow with the business. If you don't have that core understanding, then you're not going to be able to scale properly right from the get-go, right? And you're going to be more reactive than proactive. You're going to see a need to implement something, and you're going to kind of scatter to get it done quickly. Whereas, again, if you have a full understanding of kind of the roadmap of where you're going, you should be all set.
Yeah, and I would imagine as someone who's done projects, Victor, you could probably relate to this, and Robbie, as someone who's overseen them for as long as you have, I would imagine going into certain projects, you kind of have a sense of which ones are set up for success and which ones might be set up to fail. What are some of the elements that need to be in place that set up businesses for success when they start going into a scalability, cloud first approach?
Again, understanding the applications that are in place. If you're trying to move a 10-year-old application into the cloud, that's going to fail usually right off the get-go. So I think just working closely with your technology partners to make sure that you guys are on the same page with what you want to do is critical there. Now, from the side of the table that I'm on, from the solution standpoint, I spent a lot of upfront discovery time looking at applications, servers, roles, networking equipment, and understanding how everything's in place today. So that when we do put these solutions forward, you guys are doing a smooth transition. You're not going to get stuck halfway through a project needing to go back and revisit something. So just upfront discovery is critical all the way.
Right. Robbie, do you have any other kind of insights that kind of clue you in as to whether you're set up for success or doomed to failure as you go into a project?
Yeah, usually it's pretty quick and obvious. Customization's the devil when it comes to scalability. The more customized you are in an environment, the more customized you have of the app, the harder it is to break away with that, just because that's years and years and years of tech debt being built up trying to make the thing work for what you had. And that makes the scaling it out very, very difficult, because you've just built all these customized workflows, customized things inside the tool, that if you go somewhere else, those customizations might not be available. So then the end users have to learn a new way to do something. What we found on projects and kind of the best way to execute them, or what the ones we found super successful, are the ones where we have a great working relationship with the POCs and the ELT of those companies that really can then distribute the information that we're giving them about the changes in the environment. So what we do is we produce a lot of end user documentation, like, hey, this is what you have today. This is what the icon's going to look like tomorrow. Please distribute it out to your end users, because they're so used to just clicking on this icon and going. That icon's now going to change. Let's get everybody prepared for this change. And it's really just making sure that the end users understand like the changes that are coming, what they're going to have to do, any changes in workflows that they're going to have to kind of learn and adapt to. And the more we can work with the POCs and the ELTs of the companies that we're doing these transformations with, the much more successful the project is, because everybody's on board, everybody understands, and we've prepped the end users for this massive change that's coming, and kind of really walked them along with it.
Yeah, and you bring up kind of two key points, I think, there that both need to be explored. The first is, I was thinking as you were describing it, I think, even as we're just talking about cloud and scalability and so forth, when you say the word cloud, it means different things to different people, kind of depending on what mindset you've got going in. And I wanted to just bring this up because I'm curious if there are differences between types of cloud adoption and ways to set up for success. I think for some people, when they think of cloud, they think of SaaS, right? Software as a service. And quite often, this is when, let's say you run a line of business application, depending on what your line of business is. Let's say you're a medical practice doing, scheduling and medical billing, right? Historically, that would have been probably running on a SQL server in your closet somewhere. And now you're talking about moving to the software as a service offering by that provider and helping the users, move that data from, or helping the company move the data from that on-prem server into the cloud server of the provider. And now you're supporting the users in that. That's one type of cloud project. Then you have platforms as a service, which there's different types of platforms out there, but in a lot of ways, I consider Microsoft 365 to be platform as a service because it includes everything from, SharePoint to Power BI to, Copilot access, depending on your subscriptions and so forth. So what you're actually doing is facilitating access to some sort of a platform where you're bringing your data and your expertise and can use it as such. And then the third one is IaaS, which I think is where we were kind of leaning in a lot of our discussion early on, which is that infrastructure as a service. How can we take our Windows, hopefully not 2012 or older, hopefully 2019 servers and newer, and migrate those instead of running on physical hardware in data center that's in my closet somewhere or in a co-location, and move those up to like AWS or Azure, correct? And so whether you're talking about that, software as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service, what differences, if any, exist when it comes to thinking strategically about creating that cloud-first scalable approach for a business? Colin, is there any difference between those three different types of cloud solutions? And are there any other cloud adoptions that are left out of the examples that I gave, do you think are critical, just in case there are folks out there that are facing something different than I outlined?
Yeah, so SaaS solutions are ideal for a lot of companies. You might not have ability to customize a lot of things, but it's someone else's problem. It's part of your service agreement with that vendor. They're responsible for maintaining the back end. You're responsible for feeding it data, and obviously paying your service agreement. With platform as a service, like you were saying, where 365 is more like a platform as a service today. With those platforms, you have a little bit more control over the systems. Typically, you have control over the front end, and the back end is kind of commoditized or architected on shared infrastructure. Then infrastructure as a service, Microsoft is maintaining the security in the data centers. They're maintaining the lights, the networking. A lot of the stuff internal IT teams would do if it on premises based. They're maintaining all of that, and you're maintaining everything above that layer. You're making sure the Windows updates are run. You're making sure programs are configured correctly, connectivity is established the way you need it.
Yeah, and so I guess part of the challenge for businesses is that it's not like it's a pick one of these and that's the cloud solution you're going to go with. You're often have initiatives in all three categories. And so you're having to kind of move all of these cars a mile down the road, one at a time to try and, keep them all moving forward. So I guess, Victor, as you're consulting with clients, how do you help balance creating a cloud strategy that spans the different types of cloud adoptions to make sure that folks are set up for success in all three or more areas of cloud usage?
I'll typically see first and foremost if they have a SaaS offering. I do want to add, though, that all three of these come obviously with a monthly cost usually, which a lot of organizations will use that as like a barrier to entry because they think that they're kind of tied down to this monthly subscription and it's going to cost more money in the long term. But if you really think about it, you're adding resiliency and risk reduction with all three, no matter what you're choosing, right? So an organization can look at, downtime and productivity lost over the last 5 years from physical on-prem infrastructure that they have to maintain and kind of turn that and quantify that into dollars lost. Now, let's say whatever platform you decide to go with, yes, you're paying a monthly expense to do so, but you're kind of setting the ease of mind knowing like, I'm not necessarily setting and forgetting this until it breaks again and then spending, $40,000 to fix my servers. I'm in good hands. Everything is being monitored. Everything is on updated infrastructure. My applications, I don't have to worry about them being on outdated versions because, to Colin's point, you have a service agreement with the vendor. They're making sure that everything's being pushed. So obviously understanding what they're trying to accomplish, but letting them also know the benefits of why you're doing that to kind of help push them in that direction is critical, I think.
Yeah, in the early days, I don't see vendors doing this quite as much as they used to, but one of the early selling points of cloud, when cloud was kind of a new concept back 15 years ago, was the cloud is cheaper. And when you started digging into how vendors would make such a statement, what they would often do is say, oh, well, you could go out and buy a server and all the licensing and set it all up and then have to put backups on it and then include those costs in. And, you got to spend, I'm just going to throw numbers out there, $100,000 on materials and licensing plus the labor to put it in and then maintain it for 5 years. Or you can pay us $5 a user a month and you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. But the minute you take that $5 per user per month and you multiply it times, let's say 100 users, okay, that's $500 a month, times 60 months or whatever it is. Oh yeah, and you still have to back it up cloud to cloud, and you start adding up all the costs. All of a sudden, the cloud might not necessarily end up cheaper because small numbers turn into big numbers when you start multiplying them per user per month, right? And so I think to your point, and I won't get into the whole accounting aspect of it in terms of like there might be tax benefits because it's an expense versus needing to set up a depreciation schedule. If Victor even heard me say that out loud, Victor's our general counsel, he would slap me on the wrist because we are not tax consultants. Talk to your tax professional. But taking all of that analysis out of the equation, ultimately, saving money shouldn't be the sole driver of why somebody looks to the cloud. It's really all of those added benefits of scalability, the seasonality that Colin talked about before that often drives the discussion. So it's good points to bring up. Robbie, another thing I wanted to bring up based on what you had talked about before was talking about executive sponsorship and how that is such a key contributor to setting up a project for success. When looking at any sort of cloud adoption, sort of projects, what should CEOs, C-level resources expect as an outcome or expect to see in a well-designed cloud strategy and roadmap?
What they should expect to see is, you laid out the financials. So you'd have a financial roadmap of, how much is this going to cost me in the next 5 years? But also, like, is your business looking to expand over those next 5 years? And this is how the cloud kind of fits into it. So maybe you're looking to offshore some of your resources. Hey, guess what? We spun up AVDs. If you're planning to grow that up, adding another AVD to the mix, super simple, super quick. takes almost no time to deploy. You just added a monthly cost to it. So like when we talk about scalability of cloud, you can really dive into it with the Microsoft ecosystem. So you could do AVDs, you could do Windows 365 PCs, and it's really just the inherent ability to get you into your environment very, very quickly. So we have a lot of, you said tax, we have a lot of tax professionals that like to offload a lot of the basic tasks to the Philippines. We spun up a bunch of AVDs in the Philippines, even for a temporary business cycle, and then scaled them down afterwards. So while they did have a business expense, it only lasted for a couple of months. And we can go up and down very, very quickly. So when executives look to really dive into it, there's the financial roadmaps, there's the company roadmaps of where they're trying to get to, and there's the new employee roadmap. So who are you trying, what kind of FTEs are you trying to hire internally? Do you want to do equipment costs? Are you going to allow these people to work from home? Oh, you could do a Windows PC and kind of get rid of that traditional laptop cost that you're doing. There's all sorts of different routes you can take, just depending on where you're at with your business, where you're trying to get to. And really road mapping that out is really the big key. Is like, where are you at today? Where are you trying to get to? Let's make sure that you're set up for that kind of success, so we can make sure that it's quick and it's seamless for you. Might take a little bit of time today, but in 5 years, when you are adding in, 5, 10, 15, 20 employees pretty quickly, Sourcepass can help you scale that up very, very quickly. You don't have to wait, to buy a new laptop or spin up a new virtual desktop or spin up a new virtual machine. It's very, very quickly, because we've kind of designed that to scale with you very, very quickly.
Very good. And I think there might be folks out there who feel like they're maybe a little bit behind on cloud adoption. So Colin, putting yourself in their shoes a little bit, if someone still has a predominantly legacy infrastructure and they're starting to build a cloud strategy from the ground up, what are the first couple of areas that most businesses should examine starting their cloud strategy with that would give them the most impact right away? If you think about again, just to rephrase, if you think about a legacy company with legacy infrastructure and they were looking to get started with a cloud first strategy, what areas would have the biggest impact if they were to address those first?
Biggest areas of impact is if you have these legacy line of business applications, you need to upgrade them, then it's at that point when you're upgrading is the point where you should start thinking about transitioning those workloads to the cloud, where you're building out this updated infrastructure, you're putting in development, you're testing these upgraded applications with the transition to the clouds. So you're not doing an in-place kind of stand-up of these legacy applications that might have a lot of customizations, like Robbie was saying, or kind of connectivity to different services, where that's the good time to start moving new workloads to the cloud. Maybe some workloads are not going to be upgraded right away. Maybe that's going to take time, but it's the moving the workloads as you're addressing this, as you're making that a financial investment to upgrade the application, do it to a cloud environment where it can run appropriately. But the biggest thing hurdles you have to accomplish are, great, you moved everything to the cloud. How do you get there? It's now you need to start getting an understanding of connectivity, because everything's going to be running over the internet now, no longer to be running off of your local network. So figuring out that network redundancy of both inside the office network and outside of the office network.
Yeah, great point. It's, as you move all of the access, I mean, you think back in the day, they used to refer to as your local area network as your LAN, right? So if you were disconnected from the internet, you still had access to your line of business apps and everything else, because, all of that data and those resources were contained within your local area network. As you start to move more of those resources up to the cloud, all of a sudden the internet becomes your single point of failure. And so, I remember having a conversation with someone once who said, as more things move to the cloud, did we project that people were going to be spending less on IT infrastructure. And my answer at the time, and I think you've touched on this, it's proved itself true over time, is that it's where your dollars are being spent is going to change, but the amount of dollars you spend likely is only going to go up over time, because all of a sudden now you've got redundant internet connections, you've got to have redundant firewalls, and all of the fail safes and so forth in order to make sure that there's no single point of fail that will knock a location offline to the point where they can't conduct business if it can be controlled at all. So with the when you think about kind of switching from on-prem to cloud, another big concern may be governance, right? What sort of changes should leaders be prepared for when moving from traditional on-premise approach to either a hybrid or a cloud-first approach from a governance standpoint? How does it impact their policies and procedures? I would imagine vendor management becomes critically important, because now you're entrusting the possession of your data to a third party. Can you guys think of any other examples?
I was going to say, I think identity management is critical, understanding like the role-based access controls that are getting assigned to people. Now, to your point, you need to have, it's not just we've moved to the cloud and it's over with. That technology is forever changing. It's rapidly advancing and new feature sets are becoming available. You're paying for licensing and stuff that you can get full usage out of. So I think in terms of the governance, it's more, you need to be a little bit more in tune and understanding of what is available to you and how you can secure that versus, again, the on-prem model. I feel like a lot of times it's kind of just a set and forget and wait till it goes end of life and then we'll worry about it at that point. That doesn't really happen. The life cycle management changes pretty drastically when you're going to a cloud platform, whether it's IaaS or software as a service, whatever you choose.
What I think is cool about the cloud governance is it really expands upon what you can do. Traditionally, I think with the on-prem stuff, it's like, can I get into the on-prem network or not? And that's the amount of security you have. With let's say, for example, 365 governance, you can enact all sorts of different conditional access policies now open it up to you. You can say certain users in certain areas can now access this feature in 365. These other ones are blocked. You can have this subset of users that can only use OWA for Outlook. Now you have this set of users that could get their phones restricted from access. So it really opens you up to an entire world of possibilities that can really be custom tailored to your end users and what are you trying to do as a business? What are you trying to open up? What are you trying to restrict? It really allows you a bit more flexibility in maintaining a secured environment and allowing who needs to get in and controlling their access for it. So really expands your capabilities when you're coming from traditional on-prem.
Yeah, and
I think that's the. Oh, go ahead, Victor.
I was just going to say, since we're on the topic of 365, I think it's also important to understand the powers of auditing and enable auditing on the tenant. You can see nearly every action that happens in that tenant, from the most granular to the biggest thing. So change controls and just understanding where you would kind of analyze that and how you can remediate issues based off of that.
Yeah. And I guess on the positive side, you've got that expanded universe of capabilities that these initiatives bring. From an IT management standpoint, for those of us who have to troubleshoot and maintain these environments, the world keeps getting bigger, and we're asked to support things or troubleshoot things that go far beyond what traditionally would have been a service ticket. I happened just this morning to get together for coffee with the retired CFO of a school that we used to help maintain, and he's now consulting with a library, so he's updating me on that project. But we were reminiscing about some of the good old days of some of the issues that we helped him solve for at this school, one of which was we had to help them find a rogue Coke machine that wasn't where it was supposed to be. And it's like, where in our IT job description did finding Coke machines become part of the job? But what ended up happening was the beverage vendor showed up to refill a Coke machine that wasn't where it was supposed to be. He thought it got stolen. we ended up, because it was on their wireless network, we could see that the Coke machine was still connected to the network, so it didn't go far. We had to use signal strength triangulation to approximate its location to determine that the Coke machine was moved by their maintenance people from one building to another, and we helped them find a lost Coke machine. It's like, where does that become part of your, IT governance and IT support? It's just crazy, some of the stuff that get thrown our way sometimes. That and if it wasn't for their cloud-controlled wireless network, we never would have been able to figure out where that Coke machine was located. But we figured it out based upon the Wi-Fi signal strength. It's craziness. So, good stuff. So, when folks are looking at cloud, we talked a little bit of the kind of benefits of, adoption, and then some of the both positive and negative aspects from a pricing standpoint. What are some of the either hidden or maybe not recognized on first surface costs of moving to a cloud-first approach that folks need to factor in when comparing a cloud project versus a traditional on-premise project?
With on-prem, I feel like people often don't think about, you have to have physical office space to house this. You need a physical rack you have to pay for, heating and cooling systems, the time it takes to provision the devices. You're going to have to wait a couple weeks for your new server to come in. You're going to have to pay your IT guy a week's worth of salary to configure the server and wait for the backups to get configured. So I feel like comparing the cloud costs to the on-prem costs, people typically think like, I will pay X amount for server up front and not worry about it again. But there's a lot more hidden to that. With the cloud, as Robbie was kind of mentioning before, like you're really only paying for the resources you use, and you can scale them appropriately. You could set up metrics and logging to kind of set specific thresholds so that you can alert yourself whether or not you're going to need to scale at some given point, right? So I think there's better visibility when you move to the cloud in terms of how you should be setting up your organization and how many resources you really do need to provision. And again, could be more costly, but I like to look at it more as a reallocation of funds to something that is more resilient and kind of future-proofing yourselves.
Yeah, I think the initial conversations of really, what are you doing today and what are you trying to get to really help us out. What we find is, Microsoft 365, let's take that as an example. The licensing is super confusing. There's 10 different licenses that kind of sort of do all the same thing, but if you pick the wrong one, you don't get access to what you were trying to accomplish. So it's really understanding of, all right, what do you have today? What are you trying to get to? Because we're talking about scalability, it's really easy to swap a license or purchase an add-on because you're like, oh, I actually want that feature. No problem. Let's just add a license to it and you're ready to go. No big deal. It's very, very quick and simple to license something that you maybe didn't need. There's also thinking about expansion. A BP or business standard license can only go up to 299 licenses. Then once your business is really expanded, then you're starting to look at E3s and E5s and the enterprise style licenses. So the ability to just purchase licenses in a second and get what you need and get it going, I think is a real big feature that makes it really simple to move to the cloud. Because maybe you forgot that Sue in accounting uses this one thing every 6 months, and you just forgot because it happens. We didn't license her for that. She needs the license immediately. No problem. We just license her for it, have her try it now, and she's off to the races. That kind of speed and reflexibility, I think, is what makes scaling with the cloud very, very simple.
Gotcha. And so I would imagine that another key component, and I will beat this drum consistently because I think it's critical, is the importance of remembering that, again, the cloud is not it's just another person's computer. Ultimately, you're saving data in now someone else's infrastructure. So the importance of cloud-to-cloud backup, I think, is an area where sometimes folks forget the importance of making sure that that data is getting backed up. And I know that from a Sourcepass policy standpoint, we actually switched our approach. Rather than having clients opt in to back up their 365 instance, we now assume that the backup is part of the engagement and ask them to opt out if they don't want it. I can't believe anybody would choose not to back up their data out of a 365 instance. But when you're moving to, just let's say you have traditional on-prem servers, you typically have some sort of an on-prem based backup that replicates data to the cloud. Just because you move that data into Azure or AWS or wherever it happens to live, cloud to cloud backup is critical, because there is still risks to, that might require that data to have to be backed up from a scenario. Can you guys give either some, justifications or examples of where, cloud backup has helped save someone's bacon because they had the foresight to actually continue to make sure that they had multiple copies of their data protected?
Yeah, it's actually a Microsoft recommends policy themselves to say, hey, look, we understand things happen. Please back up your data somewhere else. We actually ran into this very recently with a project that we were implementing where we were configuring retention policies for data inside of the tenant. And the client actually mistakenly told us the wrong year. They were like, hey, delete any data after 1 year and we're good. What they didn't understand is that deletes everything across the tenant and it's all gone. But it didn't comply with their 7-year retention policy. They thought that, oh, you could still retain it. Luckily, they had a backup through another cloud provider. We restored all the data. Boom, no problem. So it can really save your bacon when you're doing really big data changes inside of the 365 environment, for example, because it can get really fast. And the second you hit yes on deploying a policy, it's going, it's not wasting any time, and it's going to start deleting things all on its own. But luckily, we had it backed up to a different provider. We restored all the data. Client was super happy with us, and super glad that even though they had, mistakenly chosen the wrong policy, it was, at the end of the day, we had their data backed up. No big deal.
Mm-hmm.
That expands to the IaaS stuff too, though, because within Azure, not only are you able to back up data, you could replicate servers and resources across different regions and data centers. So you're really adding the resiliency there, right? Where, to Colin's point, if you're hosting a web server and you got a shop that people are going on at specific times of year and you can't go down because you're going to lose business, you kind of are worry free at that point. You're just going to have a redundant server somewhere else. If that one server goes down, there's no downtime whatsoever. You guys are going to kind of be rock solid and operational.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So, as organizations are kind of starting their planning for, or hopefully they're probably implementing by now, but as they're planning to implement for 2026, and might be engaging in some of these new projects and changing the direction of their strategy, what sort of preparation should they be doing in preparing their employees for operational or cultural shifts? And what sort of support might those folks that have internal IT need to do to make sure that their teams can both use, and if they have first level support, provide first level support for those users without having to do massive, hiring or major retraining. So, in what areas do folks need to be able to be prepared to support their users and their support staff in the use of cloud?
I think that communication is like the most important thing. We see that all the time when we would implement these projects, where if you deployed something without kind of talking to the staff beforehand on what to expect come go live date, things kind of go up in flames. But if you're providing documentation and explaining what workflows are going to change, the point Robbie was making, what icons might change or how your day-to-day is going to look a little bit different, the transition is usually relatively smooth. Of course, like everything else, it might take a little bit of time to get used to that and continue your new workflows. But as long as it's communicated, it's been smooth sailing from my experience.
Nice. Any other advice
Um,
on what things you must do to ensure success, set yourself up for success moving forward?
If you have an internal IT team, what we kind of have started to recommend is we'll send over certifications that we think reflect the project that we're doing to help out the internal team. Like, hey, we're going to be deploying a whole entire Azure networking environment. These are the 3 certs that we kind of recommend to make sure that you're familiar with what we are setting up and that you can kind of understand everything that's happening in the background and really be able to assist the end users. We've like designed a whole training program for some internal IT departments because they were on a legacy Exchange system, and now all of a sudden their emails in the cloud, and they have none of the commands are the same. They've all changed, and so we've really like tried to help them along in this journey as well, because we do a lot of co-managed clients, and it's really about helping them along, and not just the end users, is really showing them, hey, this is everything that's changed. If you want to learn more, this is how you learn more. Most of the people in ProServe have really cut their teeth for 15 years in this, so it might take you some time to learn the ins and the outs. And if somebody emails you with this question, it's going to take you time to learn how to fix it quickly. But stick with it. Keep trying yourself. Putting a service ticket into our team can also help you. Talking with your CS team about any issues you're experiencing can also help. So it's really trying to design the internal experience as well, so they can support this environment and they feel confident that the right decision's been made, and that they can fix any issue that comes at them.
Nice. And so the flip side of that, of course, is if you all could wave a magic wand and help prevent people from making common mistakes. What common mistakes should companies try to avoid when beginning a cloud or modernization, scalability type initiative?
I would say don't rush into it and understand that it's not a sprint. Like, you have to do things in a calculated way if you want it to be a success. Just because you might have something that's becoming end of life soon doesn't mean you need to just try to transition your entire business overnight. That's typically when you see issues. So yeah, just understanding that it's a process that will take some time and require coordination with your IT team and consultative meetings and a lot of cooperation there. But in due time, it'll be a success.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, but kind of once you're there, you can move a little bit faster, a little more nimble.
That's right. And I think to both of your points, I think it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Yes.
It's the sort of thing where over time you're going to, hopefully part of the scalability is that you're building in that ability to course correct if necessary as needs change. And that can be kind of, that can be a critical component as variables get thrown your way. Perfect example being, boy, what a case study 2020 was. Right. It's the amount of, at that point, the amount of companies that we were supporting where the default answer was nobody had remote access to anything because they didn't want to have to do the governance and management of remote access. And all of a sudden you throw a pandemic that sent everybody to their house. And it was amazing how fast company policies changed to try to open up remote access to everybody. And we were having to do that pivot on the fly. So hopefully none of us experience quite such a dramatic shift in policy change again, with change being thrust upon us that way. But what a case study that was to realize that sometimes things happen and you have to be able to course correct quite quickly. Yes. So as we're starting to wrap up here towards the bottom of the hour, I guess if you could offer, thinking of all of the different discussion points we've tackled today, and we covered a lot of ground, if there's one key takeaway that you wanted folks to be able to have about any aspect about ways to be successful with cloud adoption, let's go round robin and you each can kind of reinforce one of the key points for folks to be able to take away today. So Colin, I started with you. I'll start with you again. What do you think is the absolute key takeaway you would recommend anybody have about making a successful cloud strategy?
Understanding what workloads you've moved to the cloud, understanding that once you move infrastructure, let's say storage or servers to the cloud, that meter or cost starts running. So from a business level, not necessarily from a technical level, the business level will have to understand we no longer use that system. That system's still costing us money. IT might not know that the system is no longer needed. So understanding that it's like a taxi meter, it keeps running. So keeping on top of your expenses and what costs what.
Excellent. Victor, same question. What's the key takeaway you want people to leave today's session with?
I think understanding it's not like a one size fits all model. Really doing your homework and seeing if the cloud is the right option for you. Although I kind of have preached how great I think it is thus far throughout this entire webinar, there are instances where it might not be for you. So, just really understanding the use case and whether or not it's worth going in that direction.
Excellent. Robbie?
Mine is that, things change is good. Adopt to the change, and be very flexible in this journey. Things are going to look different. Things are going to operate a little bit different. You might need to take 2 clicks to get somewhere instead of 3 now. And just being really, really open to the change and understanding that it is for the better of the business, and really how to adopt yourself to work in this new world.
Excellent. And I will offer one of my own, and I will continue to beat the drum. Not only backup, and making sure that you have those multiple parachutes before you jump out of the plane, but actually take the time and apply the budget to test your backup and recovery process, hopefully at least once a year, if not more frequently, because you don't want the first time you go through a recovery process to be the time that you really need the recovery process to work. So you could run a dozen disaster recovery tests and you will learn something new in all 12 iterations, I guarantee it, on ways to make your recovery more painless. So not back up and test and verify. That would be my key takeaway. So thanks to everybody who's taken part in today's conversation. Colin, Robbie, and Victor, awesome as usual. I appreciate all of your insights. As we start to wrap up here, I will take you off screen and kind of wrap things up. As I mentioned at the close of today's session, shortly thereafter, you should be receiving a survey. We ask you to please go ahead and fill that out, provide us feedback both on the content and any ideas you have for future sessions. If you want any follow-ups in regards to cloud discussion, please reach out if you're a client to your client success manager. And if you're not a client, feel free to reach out. We would be happy to have a more in-depth discussion with you on ways we might be able to help you out and point you in a direction. If you want to register for any upcoming events, the QR code will take you to our events page. And if all else fails and you have a question, just remember the email address, events@sourcepass.com. That comes to both myself and Kat Hirazari on our marketing team that I mentioned before. And either Kat and I are always happy to point you in a direction if you have any questions. So if you wanted others in your organization to watch this session that weren't able to join us live, give us about a week's time. We usually will get the recordings posted to the video library about a week after the live session. So we should have that up there first week of February for everybody's viewing pleasure. Thanks again for taking part today. Look forward to seeing you in a future session and appreciate everybody giving us your time. Let's have a great close to the January, and we hope to see you at one of our upcoming events soon. Thanks, everybody.